One decision I made after turning 60 gave me back an old friend and a ton of free time. And that's just one of the 5 things I stopped doing. Let me start with the hardest one to admit. Turning 60 was not just another birthday. It was a turning point. A real audit of my life. 3 years ago, when I hit that milestone, I sat down with a notebook and asked myself a simple but powerful question. Which things in my life still served me? And which ones were only leftovers from my working years? The answers were surprising. So many habits that had once helped me succeed were now weighing me down. Many routines that once felt essential were actually stealing my peace, freedom, and energy. In today's video, I want to share with you 5 things I stopped doing after turning 60. These are not theories from a book. They are real lessons learned from decades of work, retirement, friendships, mistakes, and reflection. One of these decisions gave me back an old friend and a huge amount of free time. Another freed me from the exhausting need to please everyone around me. And another forced me to let go of the obsession with complicated goals that had defined most of my career. If you are in your 50s or 60s, or if you are preparing for retirement, I think these insights will give you a new perspective. Because life after 60 is not about squeezing more into your schedule. It is about creating more space for what really matters. Let's start with the very first lesson. The one that changed how I see myself every single day. Lesson 1. I stopped caring what people think of me. For most of my life, I cared way too much about the opinions of others. When I was working, I wanted recognition from colleagues. I wanted approval from bosses. I wanted clients to be satisfied. Even when I retired, I found myself reacting to random comments about my lifestyle, my appearance, or even the way I spoke. Somebody once commented on one of my videos about my teeth. They said they looked old or unattractive. In the past, I would have felt embarrassed. I would have worried about fixing it, or I would have spent energy explaining myself. But after 60, something changed. I decided to stop letting other people's opinions control me. Yes, everyone is entitled to their thoughts. I respect free speech, but respecting someone's opinion does not mean I have to carry it with me like a burden. At this stage in life, the most valuable currency is peace of mind. And peace of mind comes when you no longer live under the constant weight of other people's judgment. When you stop caring about every little remark or look from others, you gain freedom. You gain energy to focus on what matters most: family, true friends, your health, and the small joys of everyday life. Some people ask me, but if you do not care what others think, doesn't that make you selfish? I do not believe so. The difference is this: I listen, I acknowledge, I just choose not to let someone else's opinion define who I am. Freedom after 60 is not only about money in the bank or trips around the world. It is about the mental freedom to live your life without fear of judgment. I still remember the day that comment about my teeth showed up on my channel. The younger version of me would have taken it personally. I would have replayed it in my mind, maybe even felt insulted for days. But instead, I smiled and replied, yes, these are my real teeth. Yes, they are chipped here and there, but they are mine. They have been with me through decades of laughter, meals with friends, and conversations that shaped my life. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I no longer needed validation. I no longer needed to prove myself to strangers. For the first time, I felt truly light. That is the gift of life after 60. It is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. Caring too much about what people think is like walking around with a heavy backpack. Every comment, every judgment, every raised eyebrow is another stone added to the load. The longer you carry it, the heavier it gets. Only when you set the backpack down can you finally walk freely and breathe again. That is what I chose to do at 60. Put the backpack down. Leave the stones behind. This is lesson number 1. And it completely reshaped how I see myself and how I enjoy retirement. In the next part, I will talk about the second lesson: why I no longer tolerate toxic people and negative relationships in my life. Lesson 2. I stopped putting up with toxic people. If the first change after 60 was about letting go of other people's opinions, the second was about letting go of certain people altogether. In my working years, I did not have that luxury. Clients could be rude. Employees could be difficult. Colleagues could be manipulative. And yet, I had to tolerate it because they paid the bills or shared the office. Back then, biting my tongue was part of survival. But retirement is not about survival. It is about freedom. And freedom means no longer giving space in your life to people who drain your energy. Toxic people come in many forms. The friend who always complains but never listens. The relative who criticizes every choice you make. The acquaintance who turns every conversation into a competition. For years, I tried to be patient. I told myself, that is just who they are. But patience with toxic energy is not a virtue. It is a slow leak in your peace of mind. So, after 60, I made a conscious decision. I would limit my exposure. I would protect my time. And I would only invest in relationships that gave me energy rather than stealing it. I once had a close friend from my 20s. We were inseparable for years. But as time passed, his behavior grew toxic. He became judgmental, sarcastic, and dismissive. Eventually, we stopped speaking. For nearly 20 years, we did not talk. Then one day, we reconnected. We hugged and forgave each other and rebuilt the friendship. But here is the key. The friendship only returned once the toxic energy disappeared. Forgiveness is powerful, but boundaries are essential. That is the balance I learned after 60. And it is not only friends. It happens everywhere. In restaurants with rude waiters. In community groups with people who gossip, even online. In the comment section. The rule is the same. Limit your exposure. Do not go back to the same restaurant. Do not waste your breath on arguments. And do not give energy to people who have no intention of respecting it. Allowing toxic people into your life is like leaving your windows open during a storm. The wind and rain rush in, soaking everything you have tried to keep dry. You cannot stop the storm, but you can close the window, and that simple act changes everything. After 60, time feels different. You start to realize that your days are not endless. Each year, each month, each week becomes more precious. Why spend that limited time entertaining negativity? The truth is, you do not owe anyone your peace. You do not owe anyone unlimited patience. And you certainly do not owe anyone the right to drain your spirit. That realization was liberating. I learned to choose carefully who I see, who I call, who I let into my home, and the result was dramatic. Less drama, more laughter, less conflict, more calm. Retirement is often painted as a golden time. Travel, hobbies, family gatherings. But the real gold of retirement is not how many activities you pack in. It is how much peace you create for yourself. And peace always requires boundaries. This was the second lesson. And in many ways, it was even more important than the first. Because once you clear the toxic people out of your life, you create space for healthier relationships to grow. In the next part, I will share the third lesson. Why I stopped holding high expectations of people, and how that simple shift saved me from constant disappointment. Lesson 3. I stopped having unrealistic expectations of people. For most of my career, I was a perfectionist. I had high standards for myself, and I placed the same standards on others. If someone failed to meet those expectations, I would get frustrated. I believed that holding people accountable was the key to success. And during my working years, maybe it was. High standards pushed teams to perform. High standards created results. But after 60, I realized something important. Expectations are heavy. And when people inevitably fall short, disappointment follows. In retirement, disappointment is unnecessary weight. It robs you of peace. It drains your energy. And it creates distance between you and the people you love. So I let it go. I no longer expect people to meet some invisible bar I once carried around in my head. I accept that people are who they are. Some are generous. Some are selfish. Some are thoughtful. Some are careless. And my job is not to change them. My job is to decide how much access they get to my life. When I was younger, I often lost patience with people who did not share my sense of discipline. If someone showed up late, I judged them. If someone did not follow through, I labeled them unreliable. That attitude created unnecessary conflict. But after 60, I noticed a shift. The less I expected, the calmer I became. If someone forgot to call me back, I did not take it personally. If a friend canceled plans, I simply made other plans. By lowering my expectations, I also lowered my stress. One powerful moment came with a family member. They had promised to help me with a small project around the house. The old me would have gotten angry when they never showed up. The new me shrugged, did it myself, and moved on. That single change prevented a pointless argument and preserved the relationship. Holding high expectations of people is like trying to train the ocean to stay still. You can yell at the waves all you want, but the tide will rise and fall no matter how much you demand otherwise. The ocean is not wrong. Your expectations are. The same goes for people. They will be who they are. And your peace comes from acceptance, not control. After 60, I realized that expectations are a silent trap. They disguise themselves as standards, but in reality, they are demands we place on others without their consent. When those demands are not met, we feel disappointed. But the truth is, the disappointment was built into the expectation from the beginning. So, I adopted a different mindset. Instead of expecting, I simply observe. Instead of demanding, I choose. If someone is kind, I spend more time with them. If someone is careless, I limit my exposure. If someone is unreliable, I adjust my plans accordingly. This mindset shift created more peace in my retirement than almost anything else. It protected me from unnecessary stress. It allowed me to enjoy people for who they are, not for who I wished they would be. Life after 60 is not about control. It is about flow. You cannot force people to meet your standards, but you can design your life in a way that keeps disappointment to a minimum. And the way to do that is simple. Lower your expectations. Raise your acceptance. That was lesson number 3. A simple but profound change that made my retirement lighter, calmer, and happier. In the next part, I will share the 4th and 5th lessons together. Why I stopped chasing complex goals, and why I no longer feel the need to stay busy every single day. Lesson 4. I stopped chasing complex goals. Throughout my career, I was a machine for setting goals. I had spreadsheets filled with quarterly targets. I had 5-year plans that mapped out every milestone. I built vision boards, tracked daily habits, and constantly measured progress. That system served me well in business. It helped me climb ladders, earn promotions, and achieve results. But after 60, I discovered something I never expected. The more complex my goals, the less joy I felt. Retirement is not a corporate job. It does not reward you for completing quarterly reports. It rewards you for living well, and living well does not require a 10-year plan. So I let it go. I simplified everything. Instead of a stack of notebooks, I now keep a simple calendar. Instead of tracking dozens of metrics, I choose 1 or 2 small habits to focus on. And instead of constantly looking 5 years ahead, I keep my eyes on the year in front of me. I remember a friend who proudly showed me his 10-year plan for retirement. It was color-coded, detailed, and impressive. But as he explained it, I felt exhausted just listening. I realized that I no longer wanted my life to feel like a business project. I wanted it to feel like a life. That moment convinced me to throw out the old binders and keep things simple. Now my goals look more like this. Stay active. Call a friend every week. Learn 1 new skill this year. That is it. And honestly, that is enough. Chasing complex goals in retirement is like carrying a heavy map through a small village. The map might be accurate, but the village is small enough to explore freely. You do not need the map. You just need to walk and enjoy. Lesson 5. I stopped forcing myself to stay busy. The 5th lesson was the hardest to accept. For decades, I was addicted to productivity. I believed that every minute had to be filled. If I were not busy, I felt guilty. But after 60, I started to question that mindset. Why should retirement feel like another job? Why should free time become another to-do list? I learned this lesson from a good friend named Andy. His philosophy was simple. If you are not feeling it today, why force it? That idea changed my life. Now, if I wake up and I am not in the mood to accomplish much, I permit myself to rest. Some days I am productive. I film videos, work on projects, and check off tasks. Other days I simply read, walk, or putter around the house. And that balance is exactly what retirement should be. I have another friend who is the exact opposite of Andy. He cannot sit still. His days are crammed with meetings, clubs, hobbies, and constant activity. It works for him, but I realized it does not work for me. I fall somewhere in between. I enjoy routines, but I also enjoy flexibility. And most of all, I enjoy the freedom to decide. That freedom is the gift of retirement. Forcing yourself to stay busy in retirement is like running on a treadmill that never turns off. You can run faster, but you never arrive anywhere. Real life after 60 is about stepping off the treadmill and walking at your own pace. So, those are the 5 things I stopped doing after turning 60. I stopped caring what people think. I stopped putting up with toxic relationships. I stopped having unrealistic expectations of others. I stopped chasing complex goals. And I stopped forcing myself to stay busy. Each of these decisions lightened my life in a different way. Together, they created a retirement mindset built on peace, freedom, and authenticity. Life after 60 does not have to be about doing more. It can be about being more present, more relaxed, more grateful. If you are approaching this stage of life, I encourage you to run your own audit. Ask yourself which habits are still serving you, and which ones are stealing your joy. You might be surprised by what you discover. The best part about retirement is not the free time. It is the freedom to shape your days around what truly matters. And that begins with letting go of the things that no longer do.